know how many married women are single mothers?
I don't, but, whoa.
Get into it. Get into it. Get into
Married
it.
women are single? How does
But
that?
I'll give you this explanation.
Okay.
I'm not, because me and my husband actually work together on raising our kids. But there is plenty of households where a woman is solely responsible for raising kids.
And
And,
that's
a
a-
man can give a fuck.
And you define those women as single mothers.
A married woman that's a single mom, yeah.
I
It's legally, legally no. But in reality, if you're a man, if you can't help your wife or your girl out with the kids and you know she need a break, saw a video of a girl breastfeeding and she was dozing off breastfeeding. The boyfriend was recording her. Look at you being reckless. Da, 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 da. Why wouldn't you just grab your baby? Baby, go lay down for a second. You tired.
Yeah, I get you.
Because she's a single mom.
Welcome back to the deep dive. You know, I was thinking, so much of what we talk about here is about uncovering these hidden patterns. And today's topic is no exception.
Right.
We're taking a deep dive into something pretty provocative.
Okay.
The idea of single mothers within a marriage.
Interesting.
It's not about the legal definition, but more about the lived experience.
Okay.
And it really got me thinking after I came across some really interesting observations from YouTuber JR Wisdom.
Yeah, what's fascinating here is that while the term single mother might seem counterintuitive in the context of marriage,
Right.
it actually opens up a conversation about the emotional reality of many relationships today.
Exactly.
It challenges us to look beyond the legal framework of marriage and examine the dynamics of responsibility, support, and individual identity within those relationships.
Yeah, like what does it really mean to be a partner? And what happens when those expectations clash with reality?
Right.
JR Wisdom used a really powerful example in one of his videos, and it kind of blew my mind. He describes a woman breastfeeding her baby while falling asleep from pure exhaustion.
Wow.
And instead of helping, her partner is recording her
Oh, no.
and criticizing her for potentially being reckless.
That anecdote is so striking because it cuts right to the heart of the issue. On the surface, you have a married couple.
Yeah.
But the woman's experience in that moment points to a potential disconnect in their partnership.
I see.
It raises questions about the division of labor, the expectations they have of each other, and whether those expectations are being met.
Yeah.
Is this an isolated incident, or does it speak to a larger pattern of inequity within their relationship?
And it's not just about who's doing the dishes or changing diapers right.
Right.
JR Wisdom suggests that for some men, the expectation might be that childcare is solely the woman's responsibility, regardless of whether she works outside the home or not.
Yeah.
That kind of outdated thinking can really make a woman feel like she's going it alone,
Absolutely.
even with a partner in the picture.
Yeah. And that's where this concept of the single mother within marriage comes in.
Okay.
It's about the emotional burden, the mental load of feeling solely responsible for parenting, even when you're not technically single.
Right.
It speaks to a sense of isolation and potentially a lack of support from the partner.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
JR Wisdom asks this provocative question. Are many married women essentially living as single mothers? Is that just hyperbole, or is there something deeper there?
I think what JR Wisdom is getting at is the discrepancy between the idea of partnership and the reality of many women's experiences. It's not necessarily about being legally single,
Right.
but about feeling like you're navigating parenthood and household responsibilities on your own, even though you have a spouse. There are a lot of potential reasons for this dynamic.
Okay.
It could stem from deeply ingrained gender roles,
Right.
a lack of communication and understanding between partners, or even a conscious choice by one or both partners to prioritize individual independence over shared responsibility.
And, you know, JR Wisdom brings up something that I think is super relevant in today's world. The influence of social media.
Yes, definitely.
He talks about how there's this pressure, especially online, to appear single and desirable even when you're married.
Right.
It's like there's this weird disconnect between how people present themselves online and what's actually happening in their relationship.
That's a really crucial point.
Yeah.
The rise of social media has definitely added a new layer of complexity to modern relationships.
For sure.
On one hand, it allows for greater connection and expression of individuality,
Yeah.
but on the other hand, it can create a pressure to project a certain image, which might not always align with the reality of your relationship.
Exactly.
This pressure to appear single could be a way of maintaining a sense of autonomy, or it could stem from deeper insecurities about the relationship itself. The question is, how does this online persona impact the dynamics of the actual relationship?
It almost seems like there's this tension between wanting to be seen as independent and attractive
Right.
while also being part of a committed partnership.
Yeah.
And maybe that tension contributes to the single mother phenomenon,
For sure.
where women feel like they have to shoulder everything on their own to maintain that image.
Exactly. And that's where the need for open communication becomes absolutely paramount.
Right.
If you're not on the same page about how you present yourselves online and what that means for your relationship offline, it can create a breeding ground for misunderstandings,
Yeah.
resentment, and potentially the feeling of being alone even when you're together.
Jerry Wisdom hits the nail on the head when he emphasizes that assumptions and unspoken expectations are often the root of disappointment and conflict in relationships.
He's right.
Like we bring all this baggage from our upbringing,
Yeah.
past experiences,
Yeah.
and societal norms into our partnerships.
Yeah.
And we expect our partner to just know what we need without us having to say it.
He's absolutely right.
Yeah.
Whether you're married or not, being able to openly and honestly communicate your needs, desires, and expectations is essential for a healthy and fulfilling partnership.
Absolutely.
And it's not just about talking,
Right.
but also about truly listening and striving to understand your partner's perspective.
Yeah.
This is where a lot of couples get stuck because they might be talking, but they're not truly communicating.
So what I'm hearing is that this whole single mother within marriage thing isn't just about splitting chores or childcare.
Right.
It's about recognizing that even within a committed relationship, individuals have their own needs, desires, and struggles.
Yeah.
And that those things don't just magically disappear when you say, I do.
You've hit on a key point there.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing the individual within the partnership
Right.
and finding ways to support each other's growth and fulfillment, even as you navigate the complexities of life together. J.R. Wisdom's work encourages us to challenge traditional assumptions about marriage
Yeah.
and to explore what it means to be a partner in a modern world where individual needs and societal expectations are constantly evolving.
I agree.
And I think that's an incredibly valuable conversation to be having.
For sure.
And this is where J.R. Wisdom's point about assumptions and unspoken expectations becomes so crucial.
Oh, yeah, totally.
We often enter relationships with preconceived notions about how things should be based on what we've seen in our families, in the media, or even from our own past experiences.
For sure.
But those expectations might not align with our partners.
Right.
And if we don't communicate them clearly,
Yeah.
it can lead to all sorts of problems down the line.
It's like we're operating from these invisible scripts.
Exactly.
And we assume our partner is reading from the same script.
Yes.
And when they deviate from the script, we get frustrated or resentful without ever realizing that maybe they were never given the script in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. And think about how much those scripts have changed over time.
Oh, absolutely.
In the past, there were very clear societal expectations about gender roles within marriage.
Right, like the classic breadwinner.
The husband was the breadwinner, the wife stayed home and took care of the children, and that was that.
Right.
But today, those roles are much more fluid, and there's no longer a single right way to be a husband or a wife.
Yeah, that's so true.
But that also means there's more room for ambiguity, more potential for those unspoken expectations to clash.
It's fascinating how this ties back into the single mother phenomenon. J.R. Wisdom gave the example of women who might have wanted to continue their careers after having children,
Right.
but felt pressured to stay home, either explicitly or implicitly.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, you have men who maybe weren't prepared for the increased financial burden or the emotional labor of being a more involved father.
What's interesting is that in both scenarios, you have individuals who are potentially making sacrifices
Yeah.
or feeling overwhelmed. And that can lead to resentment and a sense of isolation within the marriage.
Right.
It's not about who's right or wrong,
For sure.
but about recognizing that these societal shifts have created a need for more open and honest communication about what each partner wants and needs from the relationship.
J.R. Wisdom also touched upon the impact of social media on all of this, and it really got me thinking.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You know, we're bombarded with images of these perfect lives and relationships online.
Right.
And it's easy to fall into the trap of comparing ourselves and feeling inadequate. And maybe for some people that translates into downplaying their relationship status online
Yeah.
or presenting themselves as more available than they actually are.
That's such a nuanced point,
Yeah.
and it speaks to the power of social media to shape our perceptions of ourselves and our relationships. There's this fear of being seen as taken or less desirable once you're in a committed relationship,
Right.
Which is kind of ironic because ideally being in a loving and supportive partnership should enhance your life, not diminish it.
Right. It's like there's this pressure to maintain this illusion of being single and ready to mingle, even when you're happily coupled up. And I wonder if that pressure even subconsciously contributes to the disconnect that some couples experience.
It's definitely a possibility.
Yeah.
And this brings us back to J.R. Wisdom's core message, the importance of open and honest communication.
Yes, communication is key.
It's not just about expressing your needs and desires, but also about being willing to listen and truly understand your partner's perspective.
Right.
It's about creating a space where you can both be vulnerable and authentic without fear of judgment or rejection.
So it's not enough to just talk to your partner.
Right.
You have to actively listen,
Yeah.
try to see things from their point of view,
Yeah.
and be willing to have those tough conversations about expectations, boundaries, and individual needs within the relationship.
Absolutely. And it's an ongoing process. Oh, for sure.
People change, circumstances change, and relationships evolve.
Yeah.
What worked for you 5 years ago might not work today.
Right.
So it's crucial to have those check-ins with your partner
I agree.
to reassess your needs and expectations and to make sure you're both still on the same page.
This is making me think about how often we just assume our partner knows what we're thinking or feeling.
Oh, totally.
Or that they should automatically understand our needs without us having to spell them out.
Yeah.
But the truth is, mind reading isn't a prerequisite for a healthy relationship.
You're so right. And J.R. Wisdom highlights this beautifully.
Yeah.
He talks about how people often go into relationships with these unspoken expectations, often based on their own upbringing or past experiences.
Right.
But they never actually verbalize those expectations to their partner.
Exactly.
And then they're surprised when things don't go the way they envision.
It's like we have this blueprint in our heads for how the relationship should be.
But we forget to share that blueprint with the person we're building it with. And then we end up with this wonky structure that doesn't quite fit either of us.
It's a recipe for disappointment and frustration.
For sure.
And it can really contribute to those feelings of isolation and resentment that we've been talking about.
Totally.
J.R. Wisdom encourages us to break free from those unspoken expectations and to have the courage to articulate what we truly want and need from our partners.
He also made a really interesting observation about how sometimes people change after they get married or have children.
Yes.
And those changes can be jarring for their partner.
That's a huge one. It's like you think you know who you're marrying,
Right.
but then life throws a curveball and suddenly you're dealing with someone you don't recognize.
Wow.
And if you haven't laid the groundwork for open communication and adaptability,
Yeah.
those changes can really rock the foundation of the relationship.
So what I'm hearing is that it's not just about finding the right person, but about being willing to grow and evolve together to navigate those inevitable life changes and to constantly communicate and recalibrate along the way.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that relationships are dynamic, not static,
Okay.
and that the key to a lasting and fulfilling partnership lies in the ability to adapt, to communicate, and to support each other's individual journeys while also nurturing the bond that holds you together.
So what does all this mean for our listeners who are trying to build strong, healthy, and fulfilling relationships,
Yeah, great.
whether they're married or not? What are the key takeaways from J.R. Wisdom's insights that they can apply to their own lives?
I think the most important takeaway is the importance of conscious communication.
Yeah, communication again.
It's about being intentional about expressing your needs, listening to your partner's needs, and creating a space where you can both feel heard and understood.
Right.
It's about moving away from assumptions and unspoken expectations and embracing the vulnerability of truly sharing yourselves with each other.
And it's not a one-time thing.
No, definitely not.
It's an ongoing process.
Right.
A commitment to checking in with each other, to revisiting those expectations and boundaries as you both grow and evolve, both individually and as a couple.
It's also about challenging those societal scripts that we've internalized, those unspoken rules about how relationships should be.
Right.
Maybe those scripts worked for our parents' generation, but they might not be serving us anymore.
Yeah.
It's about having the courage to define what partnership means to you,
Right.
what your individual needs are, and how you can create a relationship that honors those needs while also fostering a deep and meaningful connection.
It's so empowering to think about it that way.
Yeah,
Like, we don't have to be bound by those outdated expectations.
exactly.
We have the freedom to create relationships that truly reflect who we are and what we want out of life. But that also means taking responsibility for our own happiness
Yeah.
and for communicating those needs to our partners.
Exactly. And J.R. Wisdom touches on this as well.
Okay.
He talks about how sometimes people get married because they feel like it's what they're supposed to do.
Right.
Or because they're afraid of being alone.
Yeah.
But those aren't necessarily the healthiest foundations for a lasting and fulfilling partnership.
It's like they're checking off boxes on some societal checklist
Yeah.
instead of truly following their hearts and desires. And I can see how that could lead to resentment and a sense of feeling trapped down the line, even if on the surface everything looks perfect.
He also brought up the idea that sometimes people confuse love with the idea of love or with the comfort of familiarity.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's easy to stay in a relationship that's no longer serving you because it's what you're used to.
Right.
Or because you're afraid of the unknown. But ultimately, that's not fair to yourself or your partner.
So much of what we've been discussing today boils down to self-awareness, doesn't it?
I think so.
Like being honest with ourselves about what we truly want,
Yeah.
what our values are, and what we're willing to compromise on
Right.
and what we're not.
Yeah,
And then having the courage to communicate those things to our partners.
absolutely. And that can be scary,
Yeah, for sure.
especially if you haven't been practicing open communication throughout the relationship.
Right.
But it's essential for creating a partnership that's built on mutual respect, understanding, and a genuine desire to support each other's growth and happiness.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into modern marriage and the idea of single mothers within it, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from this conversation?
I hope they feel empowered to challenge the status quo, to question those societal scripts,
Yeah.
and to create relationships that truly reflect their individual needs and desires.
Okay.
I hope they feel inspired to prioritize open and honest communication both with themselves and their partners. And above all, I hope they remember that relationships are a journey, not a destination.
And that the key to a lasting and fulfilling partnership lies in the willingness to grow, adapt, and evolve together.
Wow, that was incredibly insightful. I think this conversation has really shifted my perspective on what it means to be a partner in the modern age.
I'm glad to hear that.
J.R. Wisdom's observations have definitely given me a lot to think about, and I hope our listeners feel the same way.
Me too.
It's all about conscious communication, challenging those outdated scripts, and creating relationships that truly nurture our individual needs while also fostering that deep connection.
Exactly.
This deep dive has been eye-opening, and it really makes you think about how we define partnership and commitment in the modern world.
For sure.
And it leaves me wondering, how do our individual definitions of these concepts shape our relationships?
Right.
And how can we better communicate those expectations to our partners? Something to ponder for sure.
Absolutely.
Make sure to subscribe to The Deep Dive and join us for our next exploration.